flood market of Michigan.
I always like to start off with a joke too. Do you know what in-laws and floods have in common? They both don't know boundaries and they both show up at your door uninvited. So the first thing I want to talk about is some flood risks. Are most of you from Michigan? You've been here all your lives. So I'm sure y'all are familiar, with the '03 flood, the 13, the 14, and particularly Midland, which, Midland was really probably more widespread than some of the other ones, except for some of the Flint River flooding. Today I want to talk a little bit about Midland. Why did this happen? Why did people not have insurance in a lot of situations? What could have we possibly done to prevent it a little bit? So one of the big things that caused the Midland flooding was flash flooding. It was about probably more than 12 inches of rain, really over about a 2-week period. You'll see there it says 4 inches in 48 hours, but it was really a flash flooding event. You get that amount of water, there's just nowhere for it to go, especially when you correlate it to snow season. Now this year, I know this year has not been a bad winter, thankfully, but in some winters you have a very large snowpack, and as it starts to melt, it hits the rivers rise. Does anybody remember the flooding event in Nebraska back in 18, where they got hit with this during the snow melt season? But what happened is all their snow melt was supposed to melt over a 2-month period, and it melted in 2 hours because of a severe thunderstorm. They had ice jams that took out bridges and things like that. And so it was very similar to kind of what happened with Midland. But one of the reasons why most people didn't have flood insurance is because their mortgage company didn't require it. They weren't in a required flood zone. So of course they didn't have it, or they didn't understand the risk because we didn't communicate it properly to them. So that's kind of what happened with Midland. You had thousands of people that had to be evacuated. You had a hospital that had a little bit of damage. You had water in the basement where mechanicals were destroyed. You had properties that were destroyed, all these different things. And whenever one of these flood events happens, we go into an area and we teach people if disaster assistance is available, how do I get it? What's the process? Unfortunately, because a lot of times they don't have insurance. Like Hurricane Ian, when it hit, 80% of people didn't have flood insurance, and about 80% of those people cannot get disaster assistance at all because they were investment properties. They were secondary homes, and that's generally not offered.